Let's look into how we can set up the rest of our country details.view page here. But before we get to this part, I just want to clarify, I just forgot to do one thing in the last video where I said we just need to switch it down here to Firebase, which is actually not completely true. You could do this, but that would kind of defy the purpose of using Cloud Store, because right now it's not really doing live reloading. What we want to do is we actually just want to remove all of this here with the Axios, because we don't want to use Axios together with Firebase. The reason why we don't want to do it is because we have it up here. So up here we're actually connecting to the collection in Firebase, grabbing the collection called countries, and then we're storing them up here and using them. That's all we want to do really. So these are actually the only things you need to have to actually do to connect to the Firebase. Alright. So let's just do a refresh and see if everything still works, and it does. So I installed the Vue plugin over here, and if you don't have it, you of course can, and you can just check here. But once you do a inspect tool and find the view, maybe it's hidden here. And again, you can click on this path is my home here, and you can see this is actually my countries where all my product are being put in as an object, right? So the next part we want to do is we want to check. We want to grab this data in case of where we click on Western Sahara here. We want to grab the information from ECH, right? And then grab this information, pass it along like we did with our navigation up here, and then print out the correct details for this product. So we need to search through our database for this. This is our home, how we set this up. And we're going to do a similar thing into our country detail here. So this is what we had from our previous one, where we just imported through from our SQL server and so on. Now what we're going to do here is we're going to do a similar thing. We're just going to mark out our created part here. We don't want that right now, but we want to reuse some of the other things. Now what we want to do is similar to the other one from home. We of course want to be grabbing this part here because we want to use our connection to Firebase, so import the database from Firebase so we can actually use Firebase. So grab that from home and just set it in or type it in just above or below your Axios here. We don't actually need this one either anymore. Alright, so now we're importing our database. The next part we need to do is we need to grab the collection like we did here with firestore. So we can just copy this or write it by hand. We'll write it by hand so we can actually do this as well. Now Firebase is set up after or before created, doesn't really matter, but we're just going to do it here, Firebase, like so, parentheses, and then our object here, and then we just quickly do our separation with comma here, and inside of this we're going to grab our collection here. But before we do this, we're going to do the return, so we can actually use this object here. And in here we're going to set it to country instead of countries like we have. Right now it's just one country compared to one country. The naming is up to you really, but I'm setting it to country here. And just like in a home where we have countries and then they're grabbing the DB and then the collection, doing similar things here. So db.collection like this, and that's really what we want to do. And we're also going to go into the countries, the collection called countries that we have on our database here, right? So this one, that's where we're going right now. Awesome. So now this is set up. What we want to do next is we want to grab a piece of information from, or we only want to grab information from a specific country that we're actually going to, right? So if you go to search just for Firebase and search for query data or queries like this, what we want to do is we want to create again a simple query where, the keyword here, where we want to have something specific. So we want to test something. We want it to actually go to our database, search through these, and then where the country code, here we go. The code is some of the country. I can't find where it is. The Western, doesn't really matter. Here we go. Western Sahara is actually the one where ECH is the one we want to look for, right? So search through these, look for the code where it says HCH, and that is the capital code that we want to figure out. So how they do it here is we're going to do something similar. We're going to create a query. We just wrote this basically, so we can also store this in a variable like this and then call the variable here, but we're just going to do it in one line because that's fine. It's not that hard. It's not that big of a line. So we do where, and this is where we're going to set up what it's going to be looking for. And what we wanted to go for, the first one is we wanted to look in the code part in our database. So this one over here, code, look for that field. And then we're going to set it to equals to, and then another comma here, and then we're going to grab this one here, because this is what we're passing along with our parents, right, when we click our link here. So from our front page, bam, if we go back to this, and then that's when I'm passing through the parameters through our routing, right? So this is what it's going to check on, and then we use this keyword and then country code. So it's grabbing that piece of information, and I'll show you in a little bit in our code. So this is what we want. So ECS in this case, then it grabs this, find this in our world database here, and hopefully grabs information here. So let's click save, go to our browser, hit refresh, and nothing happens here. But if you have your view open right now, and if you click country details, you can actually see this is a country code we're actually grabbing that we want to use. And so we need to figure out how we store this information and actually print it out into our app here. And right now it's empty. That is not supposed to be empty, whatever. Firebase, firestore, let's try that instead. Save this again, and let's try this again. So we click country details, and now we have the array, and you can actually see country is now populated by an array with a number, and the first object in here contains all the information about, in this case, our ECH, which is the Western African country. And that is now being passed in and saved to this country object. So we can actually now use this to print things out. So if you were doing this in SQL, I think it's also called where something equal to. So it's a similar syntax to, for example, SQL, where we're just doing this statement there. Right. Up here, we need to print it out, of course. Now, there's kind of two ways we can do this. Because we're using an object here, we can do a for loop. So a v-for, and there's only one object, right? So is that really what we want to do? Yeah, kind of. But we can also do something similar, because we can see it actually returns an array here, right? So an array, and there's only one object in it, and it won't really change because it's only always the first object, because we're actually doing a where down here, right? So it should only return one object. So we're just going to reuse this, and up here we're going to do a little changes here. So first off, country name is the same, but since it's an array now, and we want the first position, whoops, that's not what I wanted. We just want to grab the first position of the array, and that's how we do this. And let's remove this one over here so it doesn't blow up. And the same with country region here. We just do our square brackets here and punch in the code for this first. So let's click save. Go back to this, refresh. Hopefully we get out the actual information from the database. Now, this is all right, but I just want to add a little bit more to this. So just kind of making sure that if we have the data and so on. So we can do in if up here. And this is just to check to see if the data is here, and if it's not, then you shouldn't show anything. So if country, which we're having here, this is existing, and the country dot length is bigger that the other way, bigger than 0, then you're gonna show this. So it's just checking to see, well, if this is empty, if that doesn't exist, or this doesn't exist, then you're not even gonna show these parts. That's really the only thing we're doing. So let's just click here, refresh here, and now you can see we're getting Western Sahara for this one, and if we go to Slovakia, then we get Slovakia here and Eastern Europe and so on. So this is how we can just grab information and using a where to go check in here for this. The thing I want to add is this might not be, in our case it's a fairly small sample, right, with countries and collections and so on, but the optimal way, if you had a larger database, you didn't know how big it was going to get, is we would be searching for the ID here instead. So going through this and then passing in the ID instead of passing in the country code, like we do here. But since the database we use it doesn't really have an ID for the country, it is for the city, so had we done the cities, we could do this. But in this case, this is the ID, then we should probably have used this. And then we could just search for in this layer for where it's actually equal to something, instead of having to go through each of these collection and then going through code. It's not this one, no, it's not this one, it's not. And you see what I'm getting, right? So that would probably be a better way of doing, but right now with how the structure of this database is, this is how we're doing it, and it works, and everything is great. All right, So this is for this just quick series of how to grab data from both an SQL and a cloud firestore database. And the next couple of videos as well, we'll be looking into how we can edit things, adding things, deleting things, and creating things with firestore. All right, see you in those videos.